program. So I'll quickly share my screen if I can. Yeah, so what we came up with for today is to give you a little bit of background behind the survey, and we would like to start by showing you a video that we produced at the first REMO conference, which was not last summer, but the summer before. And this was when we were all quite fresh. We had started the survey SIG in February of that year, and we were looking forward. And this video basically shows you, I guess, some of the reasons why we chose to get into this. So let me see. You can see my screen, I hope. Or yes, okay, great. Then I'll start it. What we hope to do with this institutional level survey is to identify which characteristics of institutions and of institutional policies and practices have the strongest impact on research on mental health.
This doesn't work without having proper data. This doesn't work without having proper analysis on that data. And this data is then really the basis of evidence-based decisions on working conditions.
Researchers are requested to do creative work in a very autonomous way. In order to do that, we need to make sure that they feel secure, that they feel part of our community, that they feel that they can share our vision and values, and we need to recognize them.
Cognitive performance decreases if emotional states are not optimal, and the opposite. If an individual experiences positive emotions like motivation, curiosity, feeling engaged with the institution, the performance will increase.
To be able to recruit the brightest, most creative, most innovative minds that we want to perform research and to create innovation, employers will need to pay attention to mental health and well-being.
Through creating a good psychosocial work environment and good mental health, they would be able also to make attractive workplaces.
Institutions should take care of their researchers instead of resisting. Taking a part will be for their benefits.
By taking part in this research can show that they care about the mental well-being of their employees. And this is a first step in trying to do better. And we can always do better there where it comes to mental health.
We are all part of the solution. And, you know, if you're not part of creating that healthy solution, then you're exacerbating the problem.
So this is a battle that we tackle together as partners.
Institutions should participate because institutions are made by people, for people, and if they care and we trust that they care, then this is a way of taking care of us.
We are listening to you, and this is the first step towards making the situation better.
Yeah, so that's a bit of background. I think at the time we had a little idea of what it is that we were actually going to do. That of course has materialized in the year or so since that time. So basically we set out to implement the largest ever benchmark on mental health in European academia. And at the time, I think Jana summarized it nicely in terms of a number of objectives, which I'll show in a moment, but I forgot I have this slide just to engage a little bit with you, because we're curious where you are at currently, also from the perspective of disseminating this survey across the cost action. So if you would maybe try to log on to menti.com and use this code or the QR code, if you will, to plot your location so that we can get a sense of where everyone is. few countries in the Balkans so far. I was playing around with this earlier, and if you're doing this on your phone, it's a bit tricky, but you can actually zoom in and plot your location there. And maybe insofar as you're in North America or elsewhere, you can plot yourself over to the left somewhere. I guess from that perspective, this map is not very inclusive, but I wanted to make sure that people could find their location. Great, cool. So we have a nice spread of people from pretty much all over Europe, from Ireland to Turkey. So that's quite impressive. And yes, indeed. So it is in all these countries that we hope to be disseminating this survey over the next couple of months. So the survey will be open for about 6 months. And during that time, it is actually our ambition to collect data from tens of thousands of researchers who are nested within these countries, that are nested again within universities within those countries. So let's take a little look at kind of the 4 research objectives we set for ourselves. So first off, we were simply interested in corroborating the data that we already have. So those data paint a pretty grim picture of the state of mental health in academia, and clearly with more data, we can start doing something. We can impact policymakers and highlight the significance of the problem. But we were also interested in engaging or creating further knowledge as to the antecedents of mental health within institutions. And that is actually quite challenging when you think about it, because it brings about the need to look not only at individual characteristics, but also at all sorts of contextual factors that may have an impact on mental health. So just this morning, I was looking at a LinkedIn post by Professor Arnold Bucker, who's based at Erasmus University in Rotterdam. He's a very prolific researcher with an H index that is higher than 200, believe it or not. And he pointed out there, where it comes to the antecedents of burnout, that we should look at context as opposed to individuals. So it's all too easy to say, oh, that person is simply not made to survive in academia, or that person doesn't have what it takes. But I think we must also acknowledge the role of context. And from a research methods perspective, that creates challenges in that, insofar as I disseminate a survey in which I ask people about the state of their mental health and the state of their context, it might just be the case that those people who are prone to complain will indicate that they have poor mental health, and will also indicate that their context is terrible. So that might provide then an alternative explanation as to that relationship that we would then observe in the data. So someone could kind of explain it away and say, no, this is not actual context causing mental health issues. It's just the fact that people who are less healthy are more prone to complain about their context. So what's kind of unique about this survey, I think, is that we set it up as a multi-level study in which, as I indicated earlier, we have people who are nested within departments, that are nested within universities, that are nested within countries. And what I mean with nesting is that we aim to aggregate the contextual variables to the appropriate level. And with that, once the data are in, we will be able to make assertions such as 20% of the variability in mental health that we observe at the individual level can actually be ascribed to the institution, or 15% maybe ascribe to national differences in mental health that we see across the 30 countries. And essentially, this process then entails defining the measures at the appropriate level. So there where we assess, for instance, supervision, we will average the supervisory ratings of people within a department to a departmental level average. And if we then compare departments that are characterized by an average poor supervision score to departments that are characterized by a high quality supervision score, we can then actually gain insight into whether those variables are really responsible for driving the mental health differences that we observe in this survey. So yes, we're interested in identifying then these contextual differences, and even we'll be able to look at national level predictors of mental health. So perhaps investment in universities or funding and factors such as that, which may also make a difference. And yes, all in all, I think this is still, this research will be limited in the sense that we will not be able to identify actual causes, because that requires stricter research designs of an experimental nature. But at least with this research, we'll be, or we hope to identify some of these potential contextual antecedents of research on mental health that we can then follow up on in more rigid experimental research, where we can actually tease out these causal effects, if you will. So before we carry on, we were also curious to gauge basically what brought you here today. What were you hoping to get from your attendance in this session, because there's still time for us to play into that. And I think I need to start it up. Well, yeah. All right, empowering Remo further. That's a noble reason to be here. Curiosity. Another cost action, mental health challenges. Yeah, the importance of data and evidence, personal and professional interests. Finding out more about Remo. Seeing how I could contribute. Yes, we'll be coming back to that towards the end of this presentation. We will tell you a little bit about how you can get involved. Oh, sorry. Just wondering how I can scroll in this thing. But for some reason, I cannot really scroll very well. Oh, there. The importance of data and evidence. To complete the survey, yes, we'll be sharing the link in just a few moments. Interested in changing national policy? Well, that's driving as well. Great, yeah. So fantastic. Well, I hope to with this what's still to come to fulfill these expectations, and clearly, insofar as we leave you with some questions, you'll be able to get into touch with us after this event. Okay, so now let me see if I can progress to the next slide somehow. Yeah. So to give you a little bit of background as to the survey special interest group, it started when Jana and I put out kind of a vacancy announcement back in February 2022, in which we asked people to contribute 8 hours of their time per month over the next year to help us put this survey together. And when Jana and I first sent out this invitation, we expected maybe 3 or 4 people to respond, but we got an overwhelming response from the Remo network of some 60 plus people indicating that they wanted to volunteer their time to help us put this survey together. So we then looked at each other and said, well, how are we going to manage this? This is certainly more than we expected, and we decided to break the project up into different work packages, to which we assigned work package leaders to essentially help us organize the work that lay ahead of us. So Jana and I took on the role of managing work package 1, which dealt with basically project management, but also putting in place the data privacy and ethics agreements that we needed to have to drive this project forward. Ivana and Mais led the task of basically delving into the extant academic literature on research on mental health and identifying for us a long list of potential and worthwhile hypotheses that we could set out to investigate. And as a researcher, when doing survey research, you always end up in this difficult position where you must decide between what you want to do and what is actually feasible, because it turned out that this list was unwieldy and that it would have ended up in a survey that would have taken people hours to complete. So we decided that we needed to bring this back to a reasonable amount. And in the end, then we distilled this long list into sort of the questions that we as a group felt were most worthwhile and most interesting. Clearly, this is a process of also leaving things off of the survey, which was definitely a challenge to pick those topics that we really needed to include. Igor and Marit were also involved in that, and they then went through the arduous process of looking for standard measures with which to measure each of these constructs that Jana will talk a little bit more about a bit later, and basically ensuring that translations of the questions were available in the languages in which we will disseminate the survey. I've been working also with Inge and Matthias in setting up a dissemination strategy. This is an incredibly daunting task of how to actually get the survey to the individual researchers within all those countries and institutions that we aim to target. So fortunately, we have the help there of some 60 country coordinators who will actually help us drive this process within each of those countries. Dara will work on forming communities of interest around the topics that are covered on the survey, and this is a work that is still in progress, just like the statistical team who are standing by to actually crunch the data once they are in. And as said, these analyses will involve a multi-level structural equations model, if I'm not mistaken, in which we will be able to ascertain whether country, institutional, departmental, and individual level antecedents are related to mental health in expected ways. And something that's not represented yet in this work package is the actual writing team. So we hope to disseminate this research into a number of publications. And as Jana will explain also in a few moments, we intend to also open up the data and make them available for anyone basically to benefit from ultimately. Now, clearly we will only do that in anonymized form, so we will strip any possibility of re-identifiability from those data before they are published. So where do we stand? Well, as said, we developed our hypotheses. We put in place an authorship and data access policy to guide ourselves into determining who will become a co-author on the manuscript or manuscripts coming out of this research, and also who will and will not be able to gain access to the data under which conditions. We developed a participant information sheet that has been translated to a whole set of languages together with a consent form. We have a data collection and storage infrastructure, which was a huge task because we needed to make sure that these data were absolutely secure. As it turns out, health data are amongst the most sensitive data that you can collect under the GDPR. And that being the case, we needed to make absolutely sure that there was no possibility of leaks or unauthorized access to the data, and that required quite some work. We have a data management plan, so how do we manage the data in the years to come, where will it be stored and so forth. And we obtained ethics approval from the TIB ethics board. We've also been working hard at survey refinement, translating the survey into the different target languages. We're actually still working on pre-registering the study, which we hope to do before the data are accessed. So pre-registration is a process whereby one registers the hypothesis or the hypotheses that one wishes to test before looking at the data, and it's considered good scientific practice to do so, so as to prevent the possibility of kind of massaging the data into something that fits with the hypotheses. And as said, we are now embarking on the actual data collection. It's super exciting. It's kind of a halfway point. In mountain climbing, once one stands on the top of the mountain, one still needs to go down, and this kind of similar. So we're starting the data collection only. We're about halfway, and hopefully by March 2024 we'll be able to start analyzing the data and seeing what we have in our hands and how to take that forward. So with that, I'll hand over to Jana, who will tell you a little bit more about what the survey actually looks like, or what it is that we are assessing. And yeah, Jana.
Thanks, Stefan. All right, so a few of the things were already said, so I'm going to be rather brief. Our survey that we developed over the last 1.5 years contains roughly 110 questions. It was very hard to arrive at this number. It could have easily been 500 questions. It takes about 15 minutes to complete. Of course, there are people that will take a bit longer. There are people that are much quicker, but this is about the duration that we aimed for and that I think is bearable to do. I think the three main components of survey questions are, of course, mental health outcomes. So we already heard about burnout, we heard about work engagement. We also have clinical depression and anxiety scales in there. Then we ask about work context, so organizational climate, harassment, job demands. We also ask about illegitimate tasks. So there are quite some batteries that try to tease out the work context that people are working in. And then, of course, we ask about demographic characteristics and employment situation. So the type of contract that people have, the number of hours they work, the number of vacation days, how much time they get to visit conferences and so on. And then we have a fourth component, which I am personally excited about because I am a computational social scientist. So we ask people to voluntarily provide us with social media handles and their org ID. So their Twitter handle, Mastodon handle, LinkedIn profile, or org ID. And this will enable us to scrape this data and collect statistics from it, like how many papers a person published in the last 5 years, or you know, the sentiment of the social media posts they created. We will, of course, not you know, look at individual posts of people or use them in our research. We will only use this to calculate aggregate statistics, but we hope that this will enrich our data in an interesting way, because it enables us to directly observe behavior rather than asking people for self-assessments. That's the whole idea behind this. But of course, it's voluntary, and if somebody doesn't want to or doesn't even have this information, that's also completely fine. All right. Next. Yes, Stefan already said that. We translated the survey into a total of 6 languages. And we invested a lot of time into this. So we started out with our English version, and then we had a lot of very engaged volunteers that helped us to translate questions to identify clinical scales in those respective target languages. We had teams of people testing the survey in all of these languages. And our aim was to really make it as accessible as possible for as many people as possible. The consent form and participant information sheet is translated into even more languages than the survey questionnaire itself, to make sure that as many people as possible can read the consent form in their native language. However, if you happen to encounter a mistake in a translated version, feel free to tell us about it. We did a lot of testing, but we're also not perfect, so this can happen. All right. Yeah, and then Stefan already hinted at it. Another very important component of our whole action was that we want to be as open and inclusive with the data we collect as possible. So we try to follow this, they're called FAIR data access rules, and make data as public as possible while respecting the privacy of our respondents. So what will happen after our data collection period ends, which we expect to be in March next year, is that we will first create and openly publish an anonymized version of the dataset. Anonymization will involve the reduction of demographic characteristics to prevent re-anonymization. So what does that mean? Imagine you're the only physicist, PhD student in your research institution. Then if I know your research institution and your gender and your position, then I'm able to identify your survey records. So this will not be possible. We will aggregate and remove information to prevent that individual people can be identified. And this anonymized dataset will then be published for non-commercial and non-military purposes. So that's the only restriction for use that we will put. All right. The second thing we will do is we will set up remote access to a secure data analysis environment where we will enable full access to all the data, including the demographic variables. Because of course, scrubbing demographic variables reduces the value of the data set. We need these variables to have fine-grained insights into different groups of demographies. But here we need to balance privacy against accessibility. So this will only be accessible after signing a data use agreement. This secure data analysis environment will be hosted at the German Center for Higher Education Research that is also situated in Hanover. And they also will provide long-term data access and archiving. So even if our cost action does not have any follow-up projects, the data will be there and it will be accessible after the cost action ends. In the secure data analysis environment, there will be output controls. That means people working with the data will have to undergo a check to make sure that no individually personally identifiable information leaks. And also, we decided to set up or to embargo this data for 1 year. So only people that contributed to the data collection will be able to access it. After that, anybody that has a research interest can contact the German Center for Higher Education Research and sign this data use agreement and get access to the data. We found that this is a fair balance between being open and enabling the people that put a lot of work into collecting the data to get a few publications out. Yes, as Stefan already said, a lot of work went into this. We made sure that our data protection is up to the highest EU standards, and we are certain that no individual participant's information will be leaked or will be accessible to anybody.
Great. Thanks, Jana. There are a few questions for you, particularly pertaining to national level analysis and whether that will be possible.
For sure. So the nationality of people is a datum we collect. We also collect their institution and their discipline. I am fairly certain that the nationality of a respondent will also make it in the anonymized data set, so that will be easily possible. The more fine-grained analysis you want to do, so if you also want to do institution-specific reports and then drill into specific employment situations, then you might need to go to the secure data analysis environment to get access to that kind of data. So regarding Turkish, we did not translate the survey to Turkish. We did not have the resources for that, but anybody is welcome to take the English survey. So the English language version of the survey is accessible to anybody. All the other language versions are also accessible to anybody, but for all the languages we did not translate into, we asked people to take the English language version. Also, we talked about being the largest European scale benchmark of research on mental health. While we did focus our efforts to translate into European languages, we do not exclude the rest of the world. So please feel free to distribute the link to the rest of the world. We are happy to collect this data. We collect country information, we collect institution information from these countries as well. So we are by no means excluding anybody. The only reason why we had to focus on the European context was that our resources were also limited and our participants were from Europe, which meant that we had more access to European languages than we had to other languages.
Great. Are you looking at the other questions, Jana, or should I read them out to you?
There's a long question that I still need to read, but I see the ethics question. That's a question that we got a couple of times already. So the way it works, at least for EU countries, is that if there is an ethics approval in one country of the consortium, that is valid for all the other countries. We still have this question from Switzerland where we don't know how it works. And I think the researchers there are still figuring it out. I expect that it works like this outside the EU as well. If you're in doubt, please talk to your local ethics people. We have the ethics confirmation from Germany. I think that's also published. If you can't find it, feel free to contact me and I can forward you the ethics assessment, which we passed with flying colors. They loved us. So I'm quite sure that this is valid also in other countries.
I will be happy to receive the protocol that you submitted to get German approval or French one, because it will be very important, and maybe even to have both version German and French, because depending on the cantons, we have to use one language or another, and even Italian one.
Yes.
And because I'm talking, maybe I can just abuse a little bit. I had a question about the name of the survey, because before it was SIG, now it's Staircase, and I always promoted it as Remo survey, because for a year now I am preparing stakeholders here in Switzerland for this survey. So when I discovered Staircase, actually I don't know how to use it, because it would mean that I have to change all my communication stuff, and so Maybe you can
So
comment.
the reason for that is that we wanted to choose a name that was neutral. So, for instance, we suspected that some organizations might not be very enthusiastic about a survey on mental health, which may have some undesirable connotations in certain contexts, or even stigma. Which is why we decided to brand this as a survey on sustainable working conditions in academia, which is what it is. So that is the reason for that rebranding, if you will. Great. So there's offers here to translate it even into Chinese. I think we decided for this wave of data collection to stick to the languages that the survey is currently in, also because it has implications for the data collection infrastructure. But we are certainly intending to repeat this survey I think every 2 years, and we see or we look at this as an iterative process. Certainly there will be opportunities to broaden the translations in upcoming waves. So insofar as you're interested in helping out with that, please do get in touch with us, and we can talk about how to make that happen. I'm looking at the clock. And thinking that maybe we need to keep moving, especially if we want to have space for some more questions and answers at the end. So I'll continue and take it from here. So first off, we're very happy that you're here today, and we need basically all the help that we can get in disseminating this survey. So insofar as you see opportunities to push this survey towards people in your institution, or insofar as you're part of a union or other professional group within which you could disseminate our invitation to participate in this survey, please sign up on the registration form that you see behind this QR code, and then we can make that happen. Maya, I see your question. I will try to paste the registration link in the chat in a few moments. Or I think Inge is here. Inge, if you could please do that for me, that would be fantastic. Yeah, so if you register on this form, we'll get in touch with you, and there's a meeting in October. We're planning to talk about the dissemination, and to which you will then be invited, and we'll likely also put you in touch directly with the country coordinators of the country to which you indicate interest on the registration form. And as I said, we can use all the help we can get in disseminating this survey. So thanks if you're willing to put effort into that. And then, without further ado, I guess it's time to launch the survey. I wondered how to do this in an online event. So if we were all together, there would probably be champagne or some other refreshments at this milestone. But this is the best I could come up with. So here it goes. This is the launch of the Staircase survey. And with this, you can access the survey in all its presence. So if you scan the QR code, you can take the survey. But please open the survey for the time being. Once you register on the form that's behind this QR code, you'll be sent an email invitation with which you can access the survey in the language of your choice. And Jana has just pasted the link to the survey and also the link to the registration form in the chat window. Okay, so that gives us about 10 minutes for any further questions and that you may have at this point.
I have a note So we did test the survey, but we never tested it with hundreds of people. So if it crashes now, please bear with us and try again in like half an hour, and also let us know. Like if you run into technical issues with the survey, please let us know. Because yeah, then we will adjust parameters and make sure it works.
So Nidal, you had a question about Africa. Could you please specify it?
I saw the question. So also people from Africa can access it. Everybody can access it all around the world. Nobody's excluded. The only thing that is limited is the available translations. But everybody who speaks English or French or Spanish or Italian or Hebrew or German for that case, very happy to take the survey. Or Google Translate it. Also a possibility.
Yeah, so early on in the survey special interest group, we had this discussion. Are we going to make it available in English only? And then several of our members said, no, well, in our particular context, this will not work. At the same time, we realized that the resources that we would have available for translation would be limited. So we decided on the languages that are most spoken within the EU context. So it's also not available in Dutch, for instance, which would be my preferred language. But we suspect that in good parts of academia, English is the lingua franca, if you will. So that is probably also going to be the language in which we suspect most people will want to complete the survey.
I want to put a general note on dissemination. So we want this to spread far and wide. We have absolutely no restriction on who can spread this where. The only thing is we have what we call regional coordinators. So for every country, there are 1 or 2 people, well, at least for every European country, we managed to find 1 or 2 people who have a little bit of an overview about which organizations were already contacted or not. And to join this crowd of regionally active people and get in touch with your regional coordinator. This is the Google form that we posted earlier, so there you can sign up. And I encourage you to get in touch with your regional coordinator so we don't double efforts. However, feel free to just spread this in your local circles, in your universities, if you're part of a union, representative organization of researchers, a learned society, and you have access to mailing lists, feel free to disseminate this without asking anybody. And we have questions. So let me just start with Igor, because he's at the top, and then Barbara.
Thank you, Jana. I have one question. So the only thing that we need to disseminate the survey is the link that you have sent us, or do we need anything else?
No, it's just a link. So as soon as somebody clicks on the link, they can register by putting their email address, and then they will receive a personalized link to their email address, which also allows them to stop the survey and restart it at a later point. So they really have a personalized link that is registered to the email address.
And there we also have the consent form with detail to individual participants as to what we're asking, what the study is about, and so forth. There is also the Staircase website to which you may refer people who are interested in learning more about the survey or learning some of the background information. I'll see if I can find that link.
Yeah, regarding additional campaign material, so I think Stefan is more informed on that, but as far as I'm aware, this crowd of regional coordinators has created some emails to address institutions, and we of course have the video that you can spread. So if you're interested in getting access to additional materials, sign up to this crowd of regional people and get involved there.
Yeah, so there's a ton of dissemination materials that have been developed and can be shared from there. Great, I'm looking at the chat. Yeah, I agree with you, Sarah, that yes, clearly there's going to be issues with language, and but as all research projects, this project too will have its limitations. We tried to get it into as many languages as we could, and in subsequent iterations of this survey, we intend to broaden that scope indeed. Anthony, the link is a Google form that you will find higher up in the chat. Let me see if I can repost it.
I can look for it.
I got it.
All right.
So here is the Google form to which you can register your interest in being contacted for the purposes of disseminating the survey. I'm just going to look at the participants. Barbara, you have your hand up. You've had your hand up for a while, I believe.
Yeah, thank you for the great job you've done. It has been hard work. I know I never. I've got a question. If I try to disseminate the survey within the University of Zurich, for example, I think I do need a list of the variables so people like on the dean's level can better understand what's the content of it and where does the trip go to. So do you have this? Can you provide something like this?
Yes, we do. Please send us an email and we can send you basically a hard copy of the survey. We decided not to make this directly available on the Staircase website out of possible copyright concerns and so forth. But yes, we can share that with you.
So I would send an email to you.
There is
or to whom?
Sorry, there's an email address here on the next slide.
Yeah.
And that's where you can direct any questions or concerns that are not addressed here today. So the email address is staircase-survey@tib.eu. It's not my personal email address, but this actually goes to my personal email address and that of several other people, including Jana and Brian, I believe, so that you will be bound to get a quick answer to any query that you place there.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Sure. And let me just see if there's any other hands up here. Nope. And then online.
No hands, and we are at the end of the allotted time. Perfect.
Amazing. So fantastic! I'm very curious what the coming 6 months will bring in terms of data collection. These multi-level analyses that I was talking about earlier do come with certain requirements, so that we would need like something like 30 people from every department within every institution within every country. So that is ambitious indeed. Yeah, let's keep our fingers crossed and indeed put in the effort to collect these data and hope that this comes together. And with that, I would like to thank you again for your presence here today, and also for the efforts that many of you are putting into the dissemination of the survey. Yeah, we'll get back to you and keep you posted on any developments. For that, please refer to the Staircase website or the Remo website, where we'll be regularly posting updates as to how we are faring. Great, thanks everyone, and we'll be in touch.